So let's move on to our color map. So I'm just going to finish off our height map here just by putting in our auto levels just to make sure we're using the full range, and then we'll carry on with our color map. So I'm going to put down a blend node, set this to min darken, and then I'm going to plug in our two masks, our two flood fill nodes here. So our angle one here and our flood fill to random grayscale. So let's just put this one into the background and we'll be gradient into the foreground. Excellent. So let's use that there. Let's plug a gradient map into that. Plug that into a gradient map, I should say. And now I'm just going to pick a few colors from a reference image. Use whatever colors you want. I'm just going to do the gradient map and I'm going to put in some colors. Excellent. So I'm just gonna put down a flood fill color node. And I'm gonna go back and grab our flood fill node. Flood fill, and then I'm gonna put a uniform color and plug that into our color here. Color input. And I'm just gonna pick a color here of sort of gray blue. And then my flood fill to color. Let's make some changes here. So let's go minus 0.13 and 0.14 for our saturation and minus 0.25 for our lightness. We can get some variation of blues and greens here. Now I'm going to just blend that on top of our gradient map that we have here at a value of 0.2, so it just kind of adds some blue hues and tones to this gradient map. Next, I'm going to slope blur color, plug that in there, and I'm going to put this samples up and leave that at blur, and I'm going to set the intensity to 0.4, and I'm going to choose a noise that I already have. So let's go back up to and use this noise up here and plug this into our slope. And that's just going to mess up the noise a little bit and give it some movement so that the different stones get all different colors. The stone here might have two colors now, rather than every stone having its own individual color. This is just a nice, quick, easy way to give some variation across multiple stones. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of finer noise into the mix here. So I'm just going to go white fast noise, and let's plug this into a gradient map. And then again, I'm just going to pick some colors here. And then with these colors up here, I can actually just get rid of them, put one in here, and then bring the alpha all the way down to the bottom, so that we only get some of the colors coming through. So if I double click here and I click this little black box to show the alpha, so we can see that it can see through this noise. And then we're just going to blend that on top at a value of 0.23, and you see that just adds some fine noise to our stone texture. Now let's see this in progress. So let's activate our base color, turn this black, but then we can just plug this in. Before we go move on to the next section, I'm just going to create some masks. So I'm just going to grab my normal map, fill this up here, and I'm going to create a couple masks based off of curvature. So let's do a curvature smooth, and a curvature. So let's do blend map and add these two together to get a cavity map. And let's do a histogram scan based off our curvature smooth. But let's, add curvature smooth plus the curvature to get a cavity, not add them both together. And then histogram scan, let's set this to a position of 0.42 and a contrast of 0.8. And then let's organize this a little bit better. And then do another histogram scan of our curvature. And then do 0.27 and a contrast of 0.22. So now we've got a couple of masks based off of curvature. We can head forward with our color map here. So let's do a blend node, plug this in, and let's do a HSL. And then plug that into our foreground here. And then in the HSL, if we double click this, we can change a few of these settings. So let's go saturation of 0.53, but we'll make it a little bit darker, so 0.49. Let's make some changes to this, one of these curvature maps to use for this. So let's just pull this up a little bit. Let's do a slope blur grayscale, and we're going to go and grab our gradient here. And we'll slope blur that based on this noise back here again. Now let's set this to min, samples full, an intensity of 0.34, and then let's subtract this this histogram scan from this gradient. And then do a histogram scan again of contrast of 0.6 and a position of 0.77. And let's plug this in. Let's do another HSL node. Plug that in there and do another blend node. Plug that in. And let's do settings for the HSL first. So let's go for the same hue and saturation, but let's change the lightness a little bit and let's just have some lighter areas. And we can go ahead and use this histogram here from our curvature node as the mask. Plug that in. Add some lighter areas to our stones there. Move this over as we go. So let's create the bitumen color now. So I'm just going to put down 2 gradient maps. And then I'm going to just plug in the bitumen noise in. Take it from down here, the auto levels. Back. Let's do the bitumen noise surface actually. Let's go here, plug that in to both the gradient maps there. And in fact, let's plug our height map into the top one. Have the 2 different values here. And I'm just going to pick some colors again for my gradient maps. And now let's blend these together, one on top of the other at 0.63. We can get a combination of both of them. Let's do a little bit of color variation. So let's just plug this in, HSL. Let's do the changes to the HSL. So let's make it a little bit more saturated, 0.54, and a little bit later, 0.56. And then let's plug in one of our curvature maps here. So let's go with this one. Get that into this, just so we can get some of that variation there. Again, let's add in another one. With that and HSL. And then let's just make this one quite light, 0.62. And let's see if we can get some more variation across the entire surface. So let's go, let's create another HSL. Let's make this a bit darker. So let's go 0.78, saturation at 0.5, but lightness at 0.4. And let's blend these together at a value of 1. And then for a mask, let's go and use this value here. That was our safe transform situated in our bitumen there. And then let's plug that in instead of just this one. And as a mask, just to make sure we don't have that value everywhere, let's do a histogram scan node from our bitumen surface noise, so from this one here. And let's go for values of 0.77 and 0.6. Let's bring that right back. Let's go opposite, so 0.37 and 0.47. These are better values. Then I plug that into our mask, our opacity slot there. And we can get some variation going. So let's blend this with our stone color that we've made down here. So let's do a blend. And then let's plug this into the bottom slot and that into the top slot. And then let's go over to our blending section and find a mask. So choose this one straight out of the histogram scan. Pull this over, put that into there. And we can see that we now have our stones with our bitumen. Plug that in to see what it looks like. And you can see here that from what that slope blur back here really did was just give each stone multiple different colors on the one stone. There's a lot of nice variation. We're just going to finish up our color here. Put this over here. And what we're going to do is just add in some dirt to kind of hold everything together. So let's put down a couple of uniform colors. And let's just pick some dirt colors. Let's blend these together. And let's put down a histogram scan node. And we'll take that from our curvature. And the values for that will be, let's go 0.41 and 0.59. And then let's do a HSL node. And let's make it a little bit more saturated and a bit darker. And then we're going to blend that down, and so it's just simple dirt color, and let's blend that down into our main color blend down here. And we're going to use the dirt node just to help us create a dirt mask. And let's just grab our nodes over here, our normal map and our ambient occlusion map. So let's go put our ambient occlusion map in, and we can feel free to use the curvature smooth from back up here. But I'm just going to duplicate that down over here. just so it's a bit near. Let's put a curvature map in there. And let's actually just use these as our final outputs as well. Organize this a little bit better. Let's change some settings on our dirt node here. So let's put the dirt level to 0.7. The dirt contrast down to 0.18. Grunge amount to 0.13. And some edge masking at 0.86. Let's bring it up a little bit again. Let's just put it back to 0.75. And let's put this into our opacity for our dirt blend. And then let's have a look at that. Oh, I just add some dirt to our tarmac. Let's change our ambient occlusion for only for the dirt node. So let's actually just duplicate this ambient occlusion back and use it again back over here. And let's just change the radius on this to 1, just for our dirt node, just so we can get some wider areas here. Keep all the other settings the same, so we can get some more heavier dirt in certain areas than others. We're going to finish off our color with some color variation. So fairly similar to the variation that I've done for the stones. I'm just going to do for a sort of a global pass on that. Let's do a blend with a HSL. And our first HSL, we're going to make a hue 0.42 and a little bit more saturated, so we get some purple colors in there. Let's put down a grunge mask. Grunge map, sorry. Change the random seed on this. So let's put this to about 3. And the balance to 0.4 and the contrast to 0. Let's do a histogram scan of 0.25 and a histogram shift in a position of 0.61. This first histogram scan, let's put this into our opacity for this here, and we can change the blending value to 0.39. Add some purples in there. Let's do this same thing again. So let's duplicate these nodes and then plug them in. Take our HSL. Let's change the hue. So let's go for 0.54. Saturation of 0.6. And a lightness of 0.54. Let's add in, create another grunge node. So let's do grunge map 02 again. Let's change the random seed. Let's go to random seed 2. And let's leave the balance at 0.4 and the contrast at 0. Let's do a multi-directional warp. And let's take our height map and let's set the intensity to something quite high, like 50, and the angle to -90. Keep that on average and keep that on 4. It's a little bit noisy, so let's do a blur. Quality to 1 and intensity to 4.68. Still a little bit much, so let's do a range node. We're going to use this to finish off our height map anyway, so we can actually reuse this. Let's plug this up here. And the range, let's set this to 0.38 and 0.52. We can actually just plug this into our height map as well, just to bring our height map back into correct value, and we can use that for this warpage as well. Let's give it a little bit of directional warp as well. Let's do it based on our non-ranged height. So we can actually just grab this little guy here, or you can just select it from here. Plug that in. Let's do an angle of minus 272. And an intensity of 30. And then finally, let's do a histogram scan. Position 0.29. And we'll keep the contrast at 0. And then we can use that as our value here. And let's make sure the opacity is correct, 0.39. So we'll bring that down to 0.24. And we'll just get some color variation. There's some yellows. We've got the purples and some yellows in there now. And let's do a final one. So let's duplicate these over. Plug them in. Change our HSL values. So let's go 0.31. Get some blue values. 0.6 for the saturation. And we'll leave the lightness at 0.54. And let's take this histogram shift that we used previously. So we'll take a histogram scan and plug in a histogram shift. And let's go low value, 0.08. And then plug that in to our opacity for this blue HSL. And let's bring our value to 0.22 to get some more blue values in there. And it's starting to look a little bit like sort of oil streaks as well, as just kind of general color variation, which is kind of cool. Now to kind of just start to finish off our color, we're just going to do a blend map. And then we're going to take our curvature smooth we have down here and plug that in. And then plug a gradient map in so that that works. And set this to soft light with a value of 0.39, just to bring out, accentuate some of the shapes we have there. Plug that in. You can see that some of those shapes start to pop a little bit better. And then let's do a similar thing with our cavity map. So it's this cavity map that we created back up here. Let's plug that into a gradient map. Bring this down and plug that in and set this to multiply at a value of 0.19. So then just get to give us some, just accentuate the cracks and the areas between the stones a little bit. Now, just to finish off our color, let's add in 2 nodes. A contrast node just to give us a little bit more contrast. We can have this at 0.14 and a luminosity of 0.05 just to brighten up a touch, and then a sharpen node as well, and with just a little bit of sharpening, 0.05, ever so slight. Plug that in, and we are finished with our color map. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. You can watch the next part by clicking the screen or the link in the description. If you would like to get your hands on these source files for this tutorial, then they can be found at the link in the description below as well.